Hey everyone, how are you? Hope you've all had a very good Maker Fair so far. I know some of the presentations have been pretty fantastic. I know I've definitely enjoyed them. I do want to say that there will be, if we have time, a Q&A session at the end of this panel, so if you do have any questions, please hold on to them. We do definitely want to answer them. It's just about time and if we have enough. So with that, I want to introduce my esteemed panel next to me. We're going to start with Colin Black-Byron on the right. In terms of his social media presence and where you can find him, he is on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. And the type of content that he puts out is all around DIY and homesteading. And he's also got a video where he does surgery on a goldfish, which was pretty impressive.
Sure, everybody does that sort of stuff.
Definitely recommend checking that out. Next up, we've got Andrew Jones, who's traveled here all the way from Melbourne. And he originally started making online content around woodworking, but it's since progressed into electronics, so Raspberry Pis, that kind of thing. You can find him on Twitter, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And then next to him, we've got Alison Kershaw, the head honcho of this whole operation, which has gone very smoothly today, so well done. She's active on Instagram and Twitter. She's the chair of South Australian Makers and the Adelaide Maker Fair. And myself, my name is Robin Lewis. I am active socially online on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and the content that I put out is predominantly woodworking. So the reason I mention all of these points is that I've never met these three before this weekend, so we're all complete strangers. Yet I have this intimate knowledge about what all of them are doing with their lives. So I know that Colin right now is building an incredible dining room table, and I know all the detail that's going into that table. So, you know, it's the influence that it has on me is just something that we're not used to. And so this begs the question, how much influence is there placed on me as a maker in my little maker community by social media? And that's why we're talking today about social media and the effects that it has on us as makers. Now, obviously, you might be saying, well, this is all going to be a good thing, of course, because it's just information coming at you. That can only be a good thing. But I question that. I'm not sure if it's all necessarily a good thing. And an example of it is the speed at which our maker community has been affected by social media. It's something that we've never dealt with before. So I question whether it's all necessarily a good thing. And with that in mind, Alison, I want to ask you the first question. My knowledge of the maker community is purely online. That's all I know. What was the maker community like before social media interrupted, so to speak?
I think that's an interesting question in terms of we kind of don't know. Because thanks to social media, we now have a much better idea of what people are up to. I mean, there's been a history of people gathering together to share skills and ideas in what would be the traditional sort of guild model that goes back to sort of almost ancient times. But I think in the maker community, as we understand it, people have been gathering together, but it's only thanks to social media that we know so much about what people are up to. Yeah. And that I think the maker community is a thing. I think social media has had a huge role to play in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Colin and Andrew, would you consider yourselves part of the maker community before it became a social media giant that it is today? Colin?
Pretty much when I grew up, I've been going through online. So whenever I was making something, I was pretty much putting it online as I'd go. And people would usually comment and let me know if it was crap, if it was good. And you just get a lot of people saying it's crap starting off with. But it sort of builds on from there. And I use it as a massive online learning experience. So people say, this is good, this is bad, you did this wrong, you did that right. And from there, it's basically learning as I go and that sort of stuff. But yeah. I haven't been pretty much offline with any of the making stuff since that was a little bit before my time.
So consuming a lot of social media is what got me back into making in the first place. I did a lot of woodworking in high school, but consuming a lot of YouTube videos and social media, Instagram, is what got me back into it. So I can't imagine I would have gotten back into it without social media.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that in mind, do you have an example of an experience with social media that you've really benefited from it? And I'm talking more from the perspective of you saw something that passively influenced you, and then later down the line you went, that's right, I remember this. It wasn't a case of clickety-click Google, what am I looking for? You know, it was a passive influence.
Oh, definitely. A couple of examples. I think I was listening to a podcast and woodworkers are talking about using aluminium, and I was saying you can actually work with aluminium with just hand tools and that kind of thing. And sort of like I didn't touch aluminium for months and months and months up till after that. But when I did go to pick it up, I kind of felt like I already knew how to work with it. I didn't feel like I had to consume a few hours worth of tutorial videos on aluminium.
Yeah, because that's the idea. That's the type of influence that I think we're not used to, is the fact that you can be seeing something and you don't know that, you know, a couple months down the line, that's going to have taught you something without your knowledge.
Yeah, it kind of soaks in and just
Yeah.
there until you need it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the concerns that I see around this is we're starting to see a watered down sort of skill level where you've got these new influencers who are coming up with varying levels of skill, and they are taking over a particular community. Let's say in woodworking, they have a specific way of doing a join, where they join two boards. And in the social media realm, they are influencers, but they aren't necessarily skilled artisans who've experienced woodworking for the last 10, 20 years. And this is where I talk about the speed of how this has all changed so rapidly. So you now have this influencer who's only been woodworking for 3 years, and he's got all these followers, and he says, this is how you join this piece of wood. So everyone says, that's how you join this piece of wood. And now we sort of lose that long-term skill. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. In my Not Make a Fair life, I'm involved with this question about how people think critically about what they see online. And I think, yeah, that happens quite a lot. Somebody will say they're an expert, and then it takes a while for people to work out that they're not. But I mean, that's like anything in the real world or online. You know, someone can say they're an expert, and you know, if you've got the right marketing strategy and good PR,
That's what it comes down to.
yeah. But I think what happens is they get, like you say, you get comments about whether it was good, bad, or indifferent, and then the community kind of works it out for themselves as well. I think you get a bit of a pendulum, and then it sort of slowly works itself out.
Have there been times when you guys have been watching videos and you've innately understood that this person knows what they're talking about, or you've seen straight through that and thought, nah, not a chance, this guy is totally making it up?
You can generally tell straight away if somebody knows what they're doing. You can see basically the fluidness of how they do something. You watch some makers that are doing it, and they're doing it all the time, and every joint is absolutely perfect. They're not taking camera angles that are just showing the one perfect joint that comes out well.
That's true.
And I even do that a bit. So. But you can see some people and they know what they're doing, and they're using different sorts of joinery, different methods, and stuff that I just haven't actually thought about. And then you see some of the people that are just using pocket joints, 1,000 pocket joints around it, and screwing it all together and saying that's how it should be done. So you can see a massive level of skill, but it depends if you know what you're looking for as well. If you've got no idea what you've seen before, if you've got no idea what this sort of joint could look like, then you can get led in the wrong direction and start doing things the wrong way, or not as strong way. There's never a particularly wrong way, but there's a good and a bad, and what's strong and what's not, and if the product needs to be as strong, and it's basically just looking around and figuring out what you like and what works.
And I guess that's where it comes around full circle to the influencers. And while you may not be going to the most popular influencer to find out a specific skill, those influencers are your easy way in. So the person who's never picked up woodworking tools before, they're the one that they follow, and they sort of can get in like with that. So Colin, going back to your comment about some of the comments that you've had online, I thought this would be a good time to talk about some of that negativity that you're talking about.
Yes.
So Colin mentioned to me a while ago when I first met him online that there was a particular website that you should steer away from in terms of the vitriol that you can get online. And I'm not going to name names because I don't want to shame different websites. But I made sure to stay away from this website for a very long time because Colin was completely right. Well, Colin has put together a quick a collage of some of the lovely comments that he's seen online. And I thought I'd just bring those to the fore to sort of show you what the social media online maker community has to deal with. So we've got one here. You can make it for free, you moron, which is quite nice. I hate you.
Yeah, these ones are actually my one. They make it for free. I made a pizza oven. And they're saying, you could make that out of mud. I'm like, I made it out of concrete. It cost $200, and I've still got people that are giving me hate on a perfectly good working, easy to make pizza oven. It's just insane, and I've got no idea why I get so much hate online. I've spoken to Robin and Andrew, and they've got nowhere near as much hate as I've gotten. I don't think I'm evil, I don't think I'm doing anything particularly horrible, but it's just insane, and it's something that you've got to make a thick skin about, because if you let stuff like that get to you, you're gonna break down in tears.
Yeah.
Granted, there's a lot more better comments. It's 1 in 50 that's like that, but you end up scrolling through all the nice ones that are pretty much saying the same sort of thing till you get to, I hate you. But that's it. They don't say why, they don't say anything, and stuff like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the thing, is that comment, while it's the 1 out of 50, that's the one that gets you.
Yeah.
That's the one that hurts the most, so yeah.
But generally, I find that you have to take them with a light grain of salt. Or I find the best thing I do is reply to them and say, would you like to talk about your feelings? Because they never reply to that. You try and goad them on and you try and argue with them, and they will get stuck into you. You ask them if they want to talk about their feelings, what making them upset, nothing back. It's really disappointing sometimes.
Now this one was my favorite, because this is a very angry man who's trying to shroud his comments in some niceness by saying, please stop welding. Your welding skills, my friend, just trying to put a bit of gloss
really
over
nice.
it,
He's my friend,
are
of course.
horrible. Yeah.
And you just look at stuff like that. How does somebody get better at doing something? You don't pick up a welder and, woohoo, I'm an expert. It takes skill. And I was actually pretty happy with the welding in that video. It held strong, it was good looking, and
Yeah. And so Alison, coming back to the offline part of the maker community, is this something that is seen? I mean, is this something that's a concern?
Oh, well, yeah. Just interesting, we get questions and comments about the Maker Faire, and some people don't like the location, they don't like that we charge money, there isn't enough of this, there's too much of that, we should have it once a month. No, never going to happen. And it is interesting. It really is that thing of remembering the, lovely comments that you get, and just knowing that you can't please all of the people all
Absolutely.
the time. And then when you get the whole online troll thing, that is all about them and absolutely nothing about you. And so you're right with the thick skin, and delete, report, block.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Because obviously this is, unfortunately, I think this is a terrible byproduct of social media in the maker community, is because people can just hide behind their anonymity. And I imagine that the offline community would still suffer from it, but I can't believe that it's to the same degree.
Yeah, we have a bi-monthly maker meetup, and it's great. People bring stuff to share and show and tell, and then we're finding groups like Hackerspace Adelaide have a really active Facebook group where people post pictures of, like, I'm doing this and I stuck, or I've got this thing, and people post pictures of it's mainly electronics, and what's lovely is people sharing their expertise, or check out this video, or here's this website, and I think there's much more good stuff than bad stuff. And I think the reality is that it's nothing to do with the topic of the video. Like, you could post a video of a beautiful sunset and somebody would go, oh, it's,
Yeah, they'd find the problem.
ugly. And you're like, okay, thanks. You want to talk about your feelings? I'm going to steal that.
Oh, it works so well. It just shuts them up in a heartbeat. I love it.
What made you angry?
What made you angry? We can work on this. It's not your fault.
So without harping on the negativity, because that is obviously one facet, but it's not the best part of the social media influence, in terms of the differences between the two, the offline and the online, are there, besides this, I hope, are there any other major differences between the two?
I think what's really good about the online community is that, and this is where we move into sweeping generalisations, but there are sectors of the maker community that aren't really great people. and they're much better communicating and operating online, and they're much more comfortable. They're not comfortable coming to a group where there's 35 people in the room and they might feel a bit of an idiot. So I think, and particularly people in regional and remote communities, they can access a community that they can never meet. And we have, you know, you're not local and Andrew's not local, you know, and so I think the benefit is that, you know, I can post a question and I can get someone from interstate or overseas to answer it. And so I think, so I've been fortunate enough to travel to the New York Maker Faire and get to talk to other Maker Faire producers from around mainly the US that I have chatted to online. So I think for some people the online stuff is more their comfort zone, but then I think what happens is it does facilitate face-to-face meetings as well, which is really lovely.
That's absolutely true. That is true. So Andrew, this is a question for you. Because we had a very interesting discussion just before this meeting around when posting online is when enough is enough. You know, when it becomes a burden more than anything. Do you find sometimes that posting online or sharing online starts to impact on what you're making? Like it actually becomes too much of a burden and you don't want to do it?
Sort of yes and no. For general projects, I find having the camera there is not a huge burden, and I do a lot of editing off away from my making time. Like I do a lot of editing actually on the train to and from work. There is that period, probably 2 or 3 days before I release a video, where I'm doing nothing but editing video. So that definitely would impact on making time. But yeah, I mean, if you're just posting on Instagram, it's like if you have a camera at hand, it's not sort of take a break and take some photos. You should be taking breaks anyway. So and then if you do the post-processing, the photoshopping, it's somewhere where you can't, is not a time you could be making, then it doesn't really impact your making, I don't think.
Because I guess what a lot of people won't see is people who aren't necessarily interested in the social media game that, you know, that the three of us are very involved in, is that this whole social media maker community has become very gamified, where you are chasing likes and you are chasing views, and that can very quickly impact on your love of because it suddenly becomes a job. And you know, that is a bit of a concern. Colin and I were talking about it in detail last night, about how you stop worrying about what you're making and you start worrying about how algorithms and stuff are going to absorb this. And I know, Colin, you've said as well that it just feels like sometimes your priorities are just all over the place.
Yeah, because a lot of the time I try and make stuff that I was going to use anyway and try and take the camera on it. But YouTube's kind of tricky in that way. If you don't put out a video every week, they start to drop your views. You actually see it if you go for a week, and then the next week the views just pretty much tank if you haven't put out a video. It's gotten a little bit better lately, but it's just basically feeding the monkey. And if you've ever tried to build one project a week when you're still working 40 hours and that project to be any good, it's pretty much impossible to be able to manage that. So you end up putting out side videos which just end up being not something you're particularly proud of, or you take the toll and you do something that takes a lot longer to make, which is like the table that I'm building at the moment. It's taking forever, but it's going to come out awesomely. So it's basically trying to figure out if you're making it for yourself and putting it on YouTube because you enjoy doing that, or if you're trying to make YouTube, feed the monkey on YouTube sort of thing.
And I think,
sorry.
Go for it, Andrew.
I've also noticed a trend on YouTube where it's kind of a lot of, some channels are really kind of, it's more about the antics and the humor of the actual maker rather than what they're making. And what they're making is all completely irrelevant and probably just gets thrown away after the video, which is not a entirely direction I want to take my channel in. But obviously that works for some people, and it's more sort of entertainment rather than using making as a channel for entertainment.
Yeah, so this sort of event is where we are strictly makers, where some of the content that we see, they are entertainers first before makers.
You can blame Mythbusters for that.
Well, that was where a lot of it started. That was where the trend started to pick up, and I think it obviously opened it up to a lot of people, which is fantastic. But it also watered it down a little bit. So I guess it's
and it made it about entertainment. The making is important, but Mythbusters, quite early on, if you've watched some of the early episodes, they really go into the nitty-gritty of how they made the thing that they're going to blow up. In the later episodes, it was more about blowing it up rather than making the thing that were going to blow up.
How big could they make the explosion?
How big could they make the explosion?
Yeah.
Which is cool and interesting, but they don't talk about so much anymore about, you know, the type of explosive they're using
Yeah,
and that sort of thing. You know,
Yeah.
how you make the big bang.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which is actually something I like about YouTube. Adam Savage has a YouTube channel that he goes on tested, and you see some of the stuff he's building on there. He's making replica props, he's making guns, and he's showing the different ways and actual techniques that he's using it, which wasn't on Mythbusters. I love the earlier episodes of Mythbusters, and then they were just like, we made this, boom. Which is fun, but I want to see the nitty gritty. I want to see how they joined that together, how they did this, how they did that, but you just don't
Yeah.
see it, which is something that I love about YouTube. There's so many creators on there, so there's so many different things that you can see how people are making, and you can basically find what you like.
And I mean, this is going to lead perfectly into the next point column, sponsorships and brand deals on YouTube. This has become somewhat of an infestation in the online community, and it sort of ties into the whole, are we doing this for ourselves, or are we doing this for financial gain? Brand deals and sponsorship deals are massive on YouTube and Instagram in particular, and it will just continue to infiltrate throughout all social media platforms. Is this a bad thing? Are we heading down a bad path with this?
It depends on how you really look at it. I'm pretty sure all the three of us would very happily make a career on YouTube, to be able to put out content, and that could be I would love that. You can just go to the shed every day and start making stuff, make videos, and it would be incredible. But it doesn't pay the bills at the moment. If you have a look at how we make money on YouTube, basically every single ad that pops up on there, we get about half of that. And it's different for every single video. Different videos get different amounts of money because different ads pop up on those ones. But it's very, very inconsistent. 1 month, at the beginning of the year, I got about 1.5 million views just in a month. And then the next month, I got 30,000. If you're trying to make money off it and live off that sort of money, it would just be really inconsistent, trying to pay a mortgage, and then it's just tanked. So that's where sponsorships come in. So there's a lot of businesses out there that just want to have their projects seen, their products seen, and they'll quite happily throw money at YouTubers to do it, which is good and bad. It depends on how they're actually showing it, if they're actually being honest about the product and stuff like that. But it's basically a business for a lot of people. If you're trying to make money, you're trying to make a lifestyle, then that's the way you've got to go. There are also other methods like Patreon, if you guys have heard of that sort of stuff, where people can donate money to the makers and say, I like what you're doing, I'm going to give you $2 a month to be able to make what you're making. Which $2 a month is not that much, but if you get 100 people, 1,000 people donating $2 a month, then it adds up very quickly, and it can pretty much be your income and allow you to make what you want to make the content that you want to make, and make a living out of it, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I've definitely noticed that in the comments on all the different platforms, there is a divide. There are people who will say, if you are a content creator who's benefiting financially, that's perfect. And then you have another group of people who, if you put an ad or any type of deal on your video, you are immediately a corporate shill and just switch off completely, which is frustrating for what you were saying, Colin. Yeah. But yeah, that's about paying the bills, I guess.
Yeah,
So that's
paying the bills.
yeah.
It'd be nice not to have to, but they don't stop coming on us.
So Andrew, if we were to lose social media today, like let's say in terms of the maker community, social media just went away, would our maker community, both offline and online, would it shrink drastically, or do you think that the offline community would continue as is, or what would it look like today?
It's hard to imagine an online maker community without social media. I guess people would have their personal websites, probably more, rather than use like services like YouTube or Facebook. I think the offline community would probably grow. Return to the subscription magazine sort of service, which I guess is kind of how people learn about things like woodworking and crafts pre-internet. And I can imagine the organisations like guilds and meetups would probably grow a bit more, I imagine. But it's pretty hard to imagine a world without social media.
Yeah.
The
Absolutely.
thing that I would miss the most if we didn't have social media is learning how to do something. So I bought myself a welder, and I basically learned how to weld by watching videos of other people doing it. Because my parents didn't have any idea how to do that sort of stuff, so I was never taught that sort of stuff when I was growing up. School never did any of that sort of stuff for me when I was there. And being able to go onto YouTube, type how to learn to MIG weld, how to use a TIG welder, that sort of stuff is just invaluable to be able to learn how to do anything and to grow your skills within yourself and just make things a hell of a lot better than what you could do with trying to figure out yourself. And without social media, that would be lost, and that would be a very sad thing.
Yeah, agreed. So then is that the future for the maker community?
I think a lot of people are turning to YouTube in particular to learn how to do things, particularly it's sort of at each end of the scale, like the really old stuff, like dying sort of skills, they're being kept alive on YouTube, and then the new stuff, the very shiny new stuff, you know, Arduino and Raspberry Pis and that sort of stuff. But I think, yeah, I think what's really cool is that people are now finding resources that makes it possible for them to have a go.
Yeah, well, Arduino is a perfect example. I bought one, and if I did not have online tutorials, I would have absolutely Buckley's chance of figuring out how to code it. I would not be able to figure out how to use the coding stuff inside of it. I wouldn't be able to figure out what a transistor does to do this, to do this, to do this. Without that stuff online, you'd be lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think some of the things as well, like there are some amazing books that have been written over the years, but I think things like welding are a bit tricky to learn from a book. I mean, I think that, you know, we still need to have that, but I think some of the actual super practical stuff, if anybody's, you know, tried to put together IKEA stuff, actually following those instructions, but if you had a little video and like this bit goes here and then it will look like this and you're like, yes, I've done that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That does make it a lot easier. But I do wonder if we'll have a sort of a direction change in the future where we go back to those. You know, you'll have a niche market where it's all no, we're going to stick to the old ways, and that will become a bigger community. It's the same as vinyls come back out of nowhere, and it'll be the same thing.
There's a huge resurgence in handcrafted and handmade, and people knowing who made the beautiful thing that they're going to buy, or the useful thing that they're going to buy. I think there's a massive resurgence in that, and people wanting to know the story of the object. You know, that it didn't just come from large department store made in China. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I mean, the hand tool woodworking movement on YouTube is absolutely huge. There's hundreds and hundreds of, well, maybe not hundreds and hundreds, a couple hundred people doing it, and that's where I got my start. Yeah, now I'm combining the latest shiny Arduinos and Raspberry Pis and stuff with the hand tool woodworking, which is really interesting to get the old and the new together. And you know, something like YouTube, you can learn to do both.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Well, that is the panel. So, does anyone have any questions for us? Yes.
Not so much a question, just augmenting something that Alison was talking about earlier, about how online communities have made it a lot more accessible for people. For me, I had issues with physical mobility, and I just can't get to the meeting places. Either they're too far away, or they're in buildings that are not accessible, etc. And so having an online community has helped me find my tribe and find other people into what I'm into. I was looked at as being strange. What, you're into that? Or
Yeah.
Yeah.
whole world of people out there as well. So, not that strange.
Yeah.
Well, you told us a fantastic story last night about that.
Yeah, I met a young lad, he was about 14 at the time, and the first time he came to the Maker Faire, he said that he'd found his tribe because he was really into electronics, and nobody at his school was into electronics, and he got beaten up and he got bullied, and I cried. I'm a big softie. But he'd found his tribe. He found an event full of people who got what he was interested in and wanted to talk to him about the thing he was interested in and tell him about what they were interested in. And I think that's what happens online is people find their tribe. And that leads to, if possible, you know, quite often leads to online meetings. But I think the community just continues to build, which is a good thing.
For me personally, I absolutely agree with you. It is great that we can get this accessibility, but there's a lot of negative press about social media and what it creates, and I think we need to be careful that in our maker community that it also doesn't have the same impact, that while we are finding our tribe, we're also separating ourselves from everyone. So I think we do need to just keep that balance in check at all
Keep an
times.
eye on it.
Yeah.
Which I think is why events like this are so good.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it's an opportunity for, people to meet people they might have been chatting online to, or videos that they've been watching, and or come and meet the people from the club that they've been chatting to online,
Or
so.
put on a panel discussion with
Put on a
complete
panel.
strangers that we met online. Yeah,
If you
absolutely.
can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right. Yep.
I just had a question, sort of relating back to one of the earlier points that you were talking about, that balance between makers that are perhaps popularising what is happening for a really broad audience versus someone who is just purely focused on like having the most, quality technical aspect of what they're creating. And I just wondered what the internal tensions are like in the community, because to me, I work in science communication, and it's very reflective of, in the science community, a lot of scientists will get really annoyed at their peers who go and speak in the media a lot because they're like, oh, they're dumbing it down,
Yeah.
or the media get it wrong, and blah blah blah. And so there's, is there that same tension within the peer community of makers around the popularisation and the people who do that being seen as being of less quality, their work being of less quality?
Not really at all. In my experience, the creators, they love each other. The first ones that usually comment on my videos are other creators. So they've gone along, they've seen what I've done, and they say, that's excellent. The most amount of support I also have is from other creators that are doing it. They say, this is awesome, what you're doing is great. Even if it's a 2-second comment, they're usually the first ones to actually watch, encourage, help you get along. So it's not a competitive environment that I found at all, at least the way that we do stuff.
I think if there was going to be a divide, it's between the people who are doing it holistically and the people who are doing it to make a living, because those two factions see each other as betraying each other. But no, generally, as Colm says, between makers, there's a sort of understood line that you don't say anything negative ever. Even if you disagree with something that he's doing, it's never made public. I would never say anything negative about Colm on his channel. I'd probably do it to his face or behind his back, but never on his channel. You just don't do that. Yeah. On the back.
As someone who would say this is found on YouTube, I come from IT, working in office systems, and I now realise I just going to kill me if I keep doing it.
Yeah.
So I've spent the last 6 months or so here working on woodworking and getting my techniques up. What's the best way to get started in the social media to be able to get your stuff out there? YouTube or which sites? What's a good point at the start?
Start doing it, basically. If you're going to be making something, either you can use your cell phone, taking videos of it as you're doing it. Yeah, every single cell phone that's out these days, a semi-modern one, will be able to take perfectly good video. So you'll be able to set it up and record what you're doing it. And the first few videos that you put out are going to be rubbish. It's going to take a while. It's going to take a while to build up skills, build up the following, build up that sort of stuff. It's not an easy way to do that, but just basically get started. The sooner you get started making the videos, making the content, making the stuff that you're enjoying, the easier it'll get and the more you'll be able to do it.
Yeah, probably Instagram, I'd say, is the good place to get started. To start posting up there, using smart hashtags, and you'll be surprised how quickly the likes came. It was the platform I felt like I was actually starting to get traction on before YouTube.
Yeah, just to tie what the two of you guys said together, I think, as Andrew says, it's a much easier access to get into Instagram because it's pictures. The YouTube side of things is a fair bit of work, but as Colm says, it's the mantra online is start now. There's no point waiting, and don't expect to be famous until maybe about 4 videos in, then we'll see your name up in lights. But give it some time. I'm from an IT background as well. I've got the exact same story as you, and it was I just said I'm tired, I'm bored.
Also IT background.
I'm a chef. Nothing at all to do with IT.
And I think the other thing as well is working, use the internet as your resource. There are YouTube channels about how to make YouTube videos and how to, so look at who you like and what you like about them and do that. All the best ideas are stolen. Rip off and duplicate, or R&D, So
if you do want some real practical answers, definitely come see one of us afterwards. You know, we'd be happy to go further with it if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Perfect.
perfect. How are we doing for time? 5 minutes. Any other questions before we head off? Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much, Colin, Andrew, and Alison. Really do appreciate you. My name is Robin Lewis. And Andrew's going to be talking at 2:30 today, and he's got this woodworking Raspberry Pi sort of contraption that he's created. Definitely recommend having a look for it. A little bit of promo
It's
for you
going to
there.
be about electronics and hand-tool woodworking.
So definitely have a look. And yeah, thank you very much for paying attention, and enjoy the rest of your event.